It's that time of the year yet again when the land is covered in white and a host of winter activities seeks to lure people away from the comfort of their homes to the excitement outdoors. So what are the 7 wonders of winter? Is Hallyu looking to boost travel into Korea? What can be done to enhance the travel experience in Korea? Welcome to Issues and Insiders. Today we explore the exciting winter agenda here in Korea and its efforts to better attract travelers into the country during this season. For more, I have Kwon Soa here in the studio. Soa, welcome back.
Happy to be here.
I also have Steven Borowiec with us. Steven, welcome back as well.
Thanks so much.
So we'll start with you. Korea's ice festivals, namely its ice fishing to be precise, are on CNN's list for the 7 wonders of winter. Let's begin with details about this particular designation and also a little bit about the other wonders as well, Soa.
Sure. So ice fishing is a really popular winter sports activity in Korea every year. And the one that CNN has put on in the spotlight, of course, through its 7 wonders of winter list is the Hwacheon Sancheoneo Ice Festival. Hwacheon or Hwacheon County is where the activities take place, which is in the mountainous Gangwon-do province, northeast of Seoul. And Sancheoneo is what's being fished in the frozen rivers, a species of trout, also known as mountain trout, as san means mountain. And this time of the year is the best time to visit the ice festival when the rivers are frozen and the Sancheoneo are beneath the river, swimming around 40 centimeters under the water. And CNN introduced the festival as one that brings a sudden energy to the quiet town with hundreds of thousands of visitors every year. And another place where trout fishing is popular is Pyeongchang, which is also in Gangwon-do province and is well known as being the host city of the Winter Olympics in 2018. And in fact, the opening video at the games that showed the journey of the Olympic torch flame included a few seconds of the ice fishing scenes. I think we also saw a few seconds ago the scenes of the ice fishing there. So the main activity there is ice fishing, of course, but that can either be done by drilling a hole in the ice and then using a fishing rod. But also those who are more into adventure catch their fish with bare hands, which of course involves wading inside the cold, freezing water. And as if that was not freezing enough, it's also become a cult to do this wearing t-shirts and shorts. So that's for the really tough ones. I don't know if anyone of you has ever tried that before.
Actually, that is precisely what my colleague Song Yoo-jin was doing last week for a package for the station.
I see, but I mean, I'm not as adventurous
Neither am I, actually.
But I also want to mention, you probably wonder which other 6 wonders of winter actually are on the list, on CNN's list. The Northern Lights of Canada, reindeer migration in Sweden, and winter ambiances of St. Petersburg and London. So you may notice that some of these places are really representative winter places, and you wouldn't really necessarily connect Korea to, being a snowy winter place to be, although we do have 4 distinctive seasons. So I think this is why we, as Koreans, we should be proud of that Hwacheon Sancheoneo Festival being there on the list.
Right, our own winter wonderland then. Now, Steven, you've been based here in Korea for quite a while, if I may say so. What winter activity do you personally recommend?
Well, I have to confess that you're not likely to see me wading in freezing water and attempting to catch a fish with my bare hands, even though as a good Canadian, that would be a kind of rough or rustic activity that I should probably try to do. But in all of Korea's 4 distinct seasons, my favorite outdoor thing to do is to hike. If I have a day off, there's nothing I'd rather do than go up a mountain, and that could be pretty much in all weather except the really heavy, steamy rains of summer. I was just, over the past, we've had a pretty cold winter so far, and in recent weeks I've been hiking a few times, and even if it's really cold and even if it's snowy, if you've got the right shoes and if you're moving, I don't find it cold. Maybe as a Canadian, again, I have some kind of built-in tolerance, but all year round, I'm on the mountain as much as I can be.
The scenes must be breathtaking up there,
Yes.
right? So skiing, sledding and skating. Now these are among the popular winter activities here. That being said, do tell us a bit about where and how to indulge in these winter activities this season.
Sure. So, but before we get into that, I just want to mention it's interesting that the first time I did ice fishing was in Canada.
Oh, great.
At like minus 40 degrees Celsius, why I'm not really a winter person. But anyways, so try that in Korea as well. But if we now go into the skiing, sledding, and skating part, first off, skiing, what covers 70% of Korea? It's mountains. So, meaning a lot of mountains for skiing and snowboarding here in Korea, and especially Gangwon-do province, where the temperatures get to the lowest in winter here. And we've got Hongcheon, Yongpyeong, Pyeongchang, a lot of places with beautiful ski resorts in Gangwon-do province, but also Gyeonggi-do province for those who don't want to travel too far from the capital region, for instance. And there's also slopes down in Jeollabuk-do provinces, for instance, Muju, which some people may not know. And there are also slopes that open for early birds at 7 a.m. in the morning. And what's also popular is nighttime skiing and snowboarding. Some of those ski resorts open until like 2 a.m. So that's interesting as well. If you're too busy to hit the slopes or want a short time experience, there are also many ice skating options here in the capital Seoul, for instance. Seoul Plaza Ice Skating Rink in the heart of Seoul, in front of Seoul City Hall, which we can see here actually. A very affordable skating experience, 1,000 won an hour, that would be some 80 cents. And for kids that skate for the first time, there are also lessons available on site. And Lotte World, a very popular amusement park in Korea, also offers an ice skating rink, and Mokdong Ice Skating Rink is popular as well. And also going over to sledding, Tukseom Hangang Park Sledding Hill and Jamwon Hangang Park Sledding Hill are popular here. As you can hear by the name, Hangang, Han River, it's at the Han River. So on cold enough days, you would have the frozen river adding to a winter wonderland landscape experience while you enjoy your sledding nearby. And last but not least, I also want to mention that at the ice fishing festivals that I mentioned before, there's also usually the traditional sledding experience where you have those wooden sleds with some wooden sticks that you use to sled. I don't know if you have tried that before, but that's also one experience that the kids do while their parents maybe try it out with a bare-handed ice fishing.
Right, definitely. Steven, prior to the pandemic, Korea had been seeking to boost its winter scenery to Southeast Asian entertainment producers for their shootings of TV dramas and shows, etc. Now, that being said, what are the prospects of Korea perhaps emerging as an ideal winter destination for Southeast Asian travelers? I mean, what merit does Korea hold for them?
Well, with climate change and with it getting hotter around the world, I wonder if there's going to be a kind of wave in Korea and in other countries that have a real winter of people just looking to get out of the heat. I mean, every time I go to Southeast Asia, it's after several days, the heat kind of starts, unless you're at a beach the whole time, the heat starts to get to be a bit much. And I wonder if it might make sense for Korea to pitch itself as a travel destination, like come here and just feel the kind of climate, a kind of temperature that maybe you're not familiar with, and take part in these activities that you cannot do in your home country. I mean, I think Korea is attractive to a lot of people in Southeast Asia in that it's an Asian country that has certain things in common with those societies, but is a lot more developed and a lot more built up. There's a lot more, advanced technology here, and this is home to some very recognizable entertainment and business and sports and culture. So I think there's plenty of things here that would draw Southeast Asian travelers.
Right. So and do correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe some 10 years ago, Psy's Gangnam Style, it took the world by storm and placed Gangnam itself on must-visit lists. And I hear in recent years, Hallyu is perhaps reigniting interest among potential Japanese travelers to visit South Korea, especially this year. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Right, it actually doesn't seem like anything new, but it looks like the K-wave craze is continuing and even growing in some parts of the world, just like in Japan. And I don't know if Psy was exactly 10 years ago because time flies so fast, but what I remember is that some 20 years ago, 겨울 연가 or Winter Sonata was a really big hit in Japan. That was some 2 decades ago, but it looks like the interest in K-pop has not stopped. And for instance, just take a look at K-pop, Korean K-pop stars, just like Twice, IVE, or Le Seraphim. They performed at one of the most popular TV programs that are broadcast on New Year's Eve in Japan. And it's said to be it means a lot for domestic singers as well to be on that stage. I think it's the NHK Kohaku Uta Gassen show. And so there we have Korean K-pop stars performing there. And Japan's biggest record store in Shibuya has a whole floor dedicated to K-pop albums. And also sales have been steadily growing in the past year. In fact, Japan was the country that purchased the biggest amounts of Korean albums last year. And in terms of K-drama, Korean dramas are lingering in the top 10 on Japanese online streaming services. And popularity has also been growing among various different age groups. Also, in terms of dramas, it's the mid-aged men that are also watching Korean dramas. And Korean webtoon services have been ranking first or second in the past 3 years in the Japanese digital cartoon market. So we can see that in many K-wave sectors, we can see that the interest is continuously growing. And with COVID-19 restrictions having eased in the past months, now it's more easier to travel between Japan and South Korea. That's why Seoul was placed as the city Japanese wanted to visit the most at the year end and New Year. And Seoul was placed there for the first time in 11 years.
Right. And speaking about Seoul, Stephen, it was also among the top 50 places to visit this year. That's 2023. What would you say, Stephen, makes Seoul appealing to foreign visitors, and what perhaps can be done to perhaps enhance this appeal?
There's a lot there. That's a big question. I think the Seoul government and the Seoul tourism authorities have done a lot to create a really strong infrastructure for incoming travelers. Like there's a great public transportation way of getting into the city and a way of getting around. A lot of things are in English, and it's just, Seoul is a quite easy city to find your way around in. If you come to Seoul and you're doing the tourist thing, unlike a lot of cities in the world, you're probably not going to have to spend a lot of time getting from one part of the city to the other. Pretty much any part of the city that you go into, there's going to be things to see, and then like nearby there's going to be places to eat and places to have coffee and places to have drinks. And there's a pretty good range of affordable accommodations and all the rest. I think the question that's probably facing the tourism industry in Korea is, how to build on the profile that the country already has and how to attract more people from other parts of the world. If I were hired to consult the government on that, like there's a few things I would suggest. One of the things I would like to see the tourism authorities home in on is just how fun Seoul can be. Compared to a lot of, compared to Canada where I'm from, Seoul stays active really late into the night, and there's lots of, in one night you can go and have a really fun dinner at a barbecue restaurant, a raucous, sizzling, noisy place where people are having shots, people are having beers, and it's a really fun atmosphere for somebody who's not familiar with that. And then afterwards you can go to a noraebang and you can sing, and then after that you can go to a bar, and then after that you can go to a club. And these places are all open and they're all full of people, and there's fun stuff happening everywhere. Like that, I think, is something that the government should try to draw more attention to. Another thing is travelers and human beings in general, we're drawn to narratives, we're drawn to stories. And I think of all the countries in the world, Korea has one of the most interesting stories. This is a country that was decimated by war only a few generations ago, and has grown to be one of the wealthiest and most successful places in the world. And there were real bumps along that road. There was, if you look at the 1970s, the 1980s, there was, non-democratic governments, and there were social movements, and there's Korean history is just replete with inspiring and compelling stories that I don't think the government really, they seem somewhat reluctant to draw attention to. If you look at the official position of the government, they are very keen to draw attention to Korea's ancient past and these beautiful temples and these beautiful traditions. And they are very keen to draw attention to the futuristic and the cutting edge and the very modern aspects of South Korea. But in the middle, there's a whole bunch of really interesting and I think really kind of inspiring stuff. I don't think it's a coincidence that Parasite and Squid Game and these sorts of ribald, kind of rowdy stories are the ones that Western audiences find really appealing. So I'd like to see the Korean government present a kind of more well-rounded impression of this country, and I think a lot of people would be inspired by that.
Right, and hopefully the government is listening to us right now. Meanwhile, so the Culture Ministry last week, though, it shared some ambitious plans for this year, including those to promote K-content, I believe, as well as, of course, K-travel. Do you care to elaborate, Soa?
Sure. It's quite a rough, broad plan I'm going to talk about, but I really also believe that Steven's opinion should be incorporated in this as well.
Right, crafting a story about our modern history, it's really important.
Really
actually,
agree to that.
I'm available for consulting work.
Okay, great.
Steven's available.
So in its key policy directives for year 2023, the Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism vowed to lead Korea's culture industry towards becoming a new driving force of Korea's economy, a game changer that transforms the export landscape of the country. So a culture powerhouse is what they're looking here at. And Culture Minister Park Bo-gyun referred to Korea's already high elevated status when he was mentioning these plans. He referred to, in fact, to the opening ceremony stage at the Qatar World Cup, where BTS member Jungkook has performed his performance of Dreamers. And he mentioned that it is the country's or the Culture Ministry's role to actively support areas of K-culture to make this thrive even bigger. So in some more of the specifics, 6 big projects worth 6.7 trillion won, roughly 5.3 billion US dollars, will be investigated herein, including K-content to thrive more abroad. And for instance, this also involves a more investment into OTT platforms, K-movies and K-dramas, not only on the screen, not only in the movies, but also on OTT platforms, and also supporting local areas that lack opportunities to grow their cultural talents. It also involves more support for disabled artists as well. And then as for K-tourism, the ministry vowed for a plan of a so-called K-tourism roadshow in 15 countries. So they're going to promote different tour programs in Korea. And another ambitious plan is making the Blue House become a tourist attraction. So not just for domestic visitors. I myself have not visited yet, but they are looking to make this into a multicultural complex in a so-called cultural cluster.
Right, I see. Meanwhile, Steven, do you believe Korea's efforts to promote its pop culture has been a profitable endeavor thus far?
The short answer to that, I think, is yes. If I were to go into a bit more detail, I would say, you can. There is a debate online about, the extent to which the government has played a role in the popularity of K-pop and just what that role has been and what it's amounted to. But I am not a small government libertarian. I think governments should fund things that make social and economic sense. And I think if you look at any country that excels in one particular area, if you look closely at that country, you will almost always find that that country has a public infrastructure in place to identify people who are talented in those areas and support them and help them get off the ground and help them promote themselves. So I don't think it's a coincidence that in recent years we've seen this explosion of popular Korean entertainers who are finding huge audiences all around the world. And I think one role in that, in no way do I wish to belittle the talent and the appeal of those performers, but one role in that is that they have support. They have a supportive infrastructure at home. And I think from the government's perspective, I think at least part of their motivation is soft power. If you have people around the world enjoying, something like a Korean performer at the opening ceremony of the World Cup and Korean performers at major award ceremonies in the US. That is a kind of advertising that money literally cannot buy. And that is something that is going to create a kind of general aura of mystique around Korea. And it's going to make people around the world say, oh, that really talented, really compelling performer is from Korea. Let me learn more about who they are and what their story is and the society that they come from. And how is it that this relatively small country that was poor not that long ago is able to produce so much compelling culture? And that is going to whet the appetites of people around the world and make them want to come here. And that's something, as for me, as someone who's lived here for a long time, that's something that's kept me here and has kept me asking questions about this place and trying to understand it and trying to explain it. So I think the government ought to keep whatever they're doing. It's obviously working, isn't it?
Right, I think so too. I'd have to agree with you right there. So Korea, it's also among the most searched travel venues in neighboring China. And are we looking at perhaps this year a tangible rebound in Chinese tourists here into the country, or does the current pandemic-related requirement of testing look to hamper such hopes?
Well, I don't know about maybe the latter half of the year, but right now it really does not look that good for travel, for Chinese people to travel to Korea, because just recently the South Korean government has implemented new COVID-19 restrictions after China has actually opened up. So now the latest COVID measures involve all visitors arriving from China having to undergo a PCR test within the first day of their entry, and they also have to remain at separate facilities until the test results come out. They also have to get tested 48 hours before they depart. This new wave, the surge in infections in China, is really a bad timing right now, because actually many Chinese people have been anticipating to make visits to Korea, especially ahead of the Lunar New Year holiday and after a long period of no traveling. And years ago, before COVID hit, we had the diplomatic row between China and South Korea related to the THAAD issue, the terminal high altitude area defense system that China was against. So back then, China had kind of unofficially banned tourists to travel to Korea. So now when things were looking to get better, COVID again hit. So I would have to say for the time being, it might be a little difficult to have a surge in Chinese tourists, but maybe it's going to be better in terms of Japanese tourists, as I mentioned before.
Right, because of Hallyu.
Yeah.
All right, so as always, and thank you very much for your insights today. And Steven, thank you very much for your time and your thoughts.
Thank you.
Right, well, that ends Tuesday's edition of Issues and Insiders. We'll be back same time tomorrow with a special guest who has been working to promote the Korean language. See you Wednesday.